A young driver was traveling alone on a deserted highway late at night, the kind of road that seemed to stretch endlessly into darkness. The sky was moonless, and thick clouds swallowed the stars, leaving only his headlights to cut through the black void ahead. The trees on either side leaned inward like silent watchers, their shadows twitching whenever the wind stirred. He had been driving for hours, the radio barely catching any signal, just static mixed with distant, broken whispers that faded in and out. His phone showed no service. The GPS screen froze 10 miles back, stuck on a blank stretch of road that didn't even have a name. At first, he blamed exhaustion. The long shift at work, the late departure, his mind was probably playing tricks on him. But then he noticed something strange. The same cracked road sign reading Mile 13 passed by his window. 10 minutes later, he saw it again. And again. His heartbeat quickened. He pressed harder on the accelerator, but the engine sounded strained, as if the car itself didn't want to move forward. The forest outside grew denser, darker. The air inside the car suddenly felt cold. Then, in the rearview mirror, he saw it. For just a second, a figure sitting in the back seat. He gasped and turned around sharply, but the seat was empty. When he faced forward again, the road had changed. The trees were gone. There was nothing ahead but an endless stretch of darkness, and another sign slowly coming into view. Mile 13. This time, it was covered in what looked like dried blood. He noticed the hitchhiker long before he reached him. The road had been empty for miles, swallowed by darkness, when a faint orange glow appeared ahead. A single streetlight stood in the middle of nowhere, flickering weakly as if struggling to stay alive. Beneath it stood a man. He wasn't waving. He wasn't moving. Just standing there. The driver slowed down instinctively. Something about the scene felt wrong. There were no houses, no gas stations, not even another road nearby. Just endless highway and that one trembling light. As he got closer, he saw the hitchhiker's face. Pale, expressionless, eyes fixed directly on the car. The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every instinct told him to keep driving. But as he passed under the streetlight, it flickered violently, and for a split second, everything went completely dark. When the headlights adjusted, the man was suddenly closer to the road. Closer than before. Had he moved? The driver's breath grew shallow. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The streetlight behind him flickered again. The hitchhiker was no longer standing beneath it. He was gone. A chill crawled up his spine. Then, a soft knock came from the back window. Slow. Deliberate. He turned his head slightly, too afraid to look fully. Through the corner of his eye, he saw a pale face pressed against the glass from the outside, even though the car was moving at full speed. The man's lips slowly curled into a smile, and the streetlight ahead of him flickered on. The driver tried to steady his breathing as the car rolled forward through the thick night fog. The hitchhiker had been silent ever since he got in, sitting perfectly still in the back seat. No movement, no sound, not even the rustle of clothing. Just silence. Trying to distract himself, the driver adjusted the rearview mirror. That's when he saw it. The hitchhiker was smiling. Not a normal smile. It stretched too wide across his face, far beyond what seemed humanly possible. The corners of his mouth curved upward unnaturally, almost touching his ears. His lips were dry and cracked, and his teeth looked too sharp, too many. The driver's hands trembled on the steering wheel. "Is everything okay?" he asked softly. No response. The smile widened. The hitchhiker's eyes didn't blink. They stared directly into the mirror, locking onto the driver's gaze. It felt deliberate, predatory. The driver quickly looked away, his heart pounding in his ears. "It's just stress," he whispered to himself. Just exhaustion. But he couldn't stop himself from looking again. The smile was closer now. The hitchhiker hadn't moved from his seat. Yet in the mirror, his face seemed inches away from the glass, filling the reflection completely. Breathing. Slowly. Fogging the mirror from the inside. The driver gasped and spun around. The back seat was empty. No hitchhiker. No smile. Just darkness. Relief flooded him for half a second, until he looked forward again. The windshield fogged up suddenly. And on the glass, drawn from the inside in slow, dripping letters, were 3 words. "Keep driving, I." The hitchhiker closed the car door gently and settled into the back seat without a word. The driver forced a polite smile and asked, "Where are you headed?" For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, the hitchhiker said. Take me to 1313 Willow Creek Road. The driver frowned slightly. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't remember why. He typed the address into his GPS. No results found. That's strange, he muttered. The hitchhiker leaned forward slightly. The driver could see his pale face in the rearview mirror. It's there, he whispered. It's always been there. A cold shiver ran down the driver's spine. He decided to search manually. As soon as he typed the numbers 1-3-1-3, the screen flickered. For a brief second, the map appeared, but the location marker wasn't on a road. It was in the middle of a dark, unmarked forest. That can't be right, the driver said nervously. The hitchhiker's reflection tilted its head slowly, unnaturally. You've been there before, he murmured. The driver's breath caught in his throat. Images flashed in his mind. Twisted metal, shattered glass, headlights spinning in darkness. A memory he had buried. No, he whispered. The GPS suddenly recalculated and displayed a new message. Destination, accident site. The driver's hands began to shake. I've never been there, he insisted. The hitchhiker's voice grew colder. Yes, he said softly. You have. 10 years ago. You left someone behind. The car's interior temperature dropped sharply. The driver dared to look in the mirror again. The hitchhiker was no longer sitting. He was leaning close to the driver's ear and whispering the same address again. At first, the drive felt normal. The engine hummed steadily, the tires rolled smoothly over the asphalt, and the faint glow of the dashboard lights gave the driver a small sense of comfort. The hitchhiker remained silent in the back seat, barely visible in the darkness. But after 20 minutes, something felt wrong. The road hadn't changed. No turns, no intersections, no passing cars, just a straight, endless stretch of highway. The driver glanced at the clock. It had been 12:17 a.m. for a long time. Too long. That's weird, he muttered. He checked his phone. No signal. The battery percentage flickered between 45% and 3%, then back again. Sweat began forming on his forehead despite the cold air inside the car. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed 60, 80, 100, but the surroundings didn't blur. The trees on the side of the road looked frozen, like a painted background. Even the stars above seemed unmoving. How far is this place? He asked nervously. From the back seat, a calm voice replied. We're almost there. The driver swallowed. Another 10 minutes passed. The same broken guardrail appeared on the right side of the road. He was sure he had already passed it. His breathing quickened. He slowed down and looked carefully at the asphalt ahead. There, faintly scratched into the road's surface, were words. You never left. His heart nearly stopped. He slammed on the brakes, but the car didn't slow down. The steering wheel felt loose in his hands, disconnected. In the rearview mirror, the hitchhiker's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. You're not driving forward, the hitchhiker whispered softly. You're driving in circles. Panic began to crawl into the driver's chest as the endless highway stretched ahead of him. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. I'll just take a shortcut, he muttered to himself, trying to sound calm. Up ahead, he spotted a narrow road branching off to the right. It wasn't on the GPS, but it looked real enough. Fresh asphalt, a faded sign pointing toward an unlit path. Without thinking too much, he turned right. The car's headlights swept across tall trees as the new road swallowed him into darkness. The highway disappeared behind him. For a moment, relief washed over him. See? Just a wrong route, he whispered. The hitchhiker in the back seat remained silent. The shortcut curved gently, then sharply, then straightened again. The trees grew thinner. A faint orange glow appeared ahead. The driver slowed down. No, it couldn't be. There, beneath a flickering streetlight, stood a lone figure on the side of the road. The exact same streetlight. The exact same empty highway. The exact same hitchhiker. Standing where he had first picked him up. The driver's stomach dropped. He slowly turned his head toward the back seat. The hitchhiker was still sitting there, smiling. Cold air filled the car. The radio crackled to life with distorted laughter. With trembling hands, the driver looked forward again. The man under the streetlight slowly raised his hand and waved. The driver's breathing became frantic. This isn't real, he whispered. From the back seat, a calm voice spoke near his ear. You can turn right. You can turn left. You can turn around. The smile widened in the mirror. But you'll always come back to me. The driver's pulse pounded in his ears as the impossible streetlight faded behind him again. His mind raced for logic, for reason, anything that made sense. It's just the dark. I'm disoriented, he whispered. Up ahead, another junction appeared. This time, without hesitation, he swerved left. The tires screeched against the pavement as the car shot onto the new road. The tree's panic began to crawl into the driver's chest as the endless highway stretched ahead of him. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. I'll just take a shortcut, he muttered to himself, trying to sound calm. Up ahead, he spotted a narrow road branching off to the right. It wasn't on the GPS, but it looked real enough. Fresh asphalt, a faded sign pointing toward an unlit path. Without thinking too much, he turned right. The car's headlights swept across tall trees as the new road swallowed him into darkness. The highway disappeared behind him. For a moment, relief washed over him. See? Just a wrong route, he whispered. The hitchhiker in the back seat remained silent. The shortcut curved gently, then sharply, then straightened again. The trees grew thinner. A faint orange glow appeared ahead. The driver slowed down. No, it couldn't be. There, beneath a flickering streetlight, stood a lone figure on the side of the road. The exact same streetlight. The exact same empty highway. The exact same hitchhiker. Standing where he had first picked him up. The driver's stomach dropped. He slowly turned his head toward the back seat. The hitchhiker was still sitting there, smiling. Cold air filled the car. The radio crackled to life with distorted laughter. With trembling hands, the driver looked forward again. The man under the streetlight slowly raised his hand and waved. The driver's breathing became frantic. This isn't real, he whispered. From the back seat, a calm voice spoke near his ear. You can turn right. You can turn left. You can turn around. The smile widened in the mirror. But you'll always come back to me. We're thicker, their branches twisting overhead like claws trying to close in. The headlights flickered slightly, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to move on their own. He kept driving. Faster. The hitchhiker in the back seat said nothing. After several minutes, the forest began to thin. A familiar orange glow shimmered in the distance. No, 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 the driver breathed. The road straightened. The glow grew brighter. And there it was again. The same empty highway. The same cracked asphalt. The same flickering streetlight. And beneath it, the hitchhiker, standing perfectly still, waiting. The driver's vision blurred. His chest tightened as if invisible hands were squeezing the air from his lungs. Slowly, almost against his will, he turned his head toward the back seat. The hitchhiker was still there, but now he wasn't smiling. His face was blank, empty, as if waiting for something. The driver looked forward again. The figure under the streetlight began to walk toward the car, slow, deliberate steps. With every step it took outside, the hitchhiker inside the car moved slightly closer to the driver's seat. The driver's hands shook violently. I turned left, he shouted. From behind him, a cold whisper brushed his ear. There is no left. The driver's hands trembled as he glanced at the GPS screen for reassurance. The glowing map had been his only guide through the endless darkness. Then it flickered. The blue route line began to shake, twisting unnaturally as if alive. The road beneath the small arrow icon started bending in impossible angles, looping over itself again and again. What? He whispered. The screen crackled with static. The map zoomed out suddenly, showing nothing but a blank gray void around his tiny location marker. Then the roads disappeared completely. Only his car icon remained, floating in darkness. The hitchhiker shifted slightly in the back seat. The GPS emitted a sharp, distorted beep. New text slowly typed itself across the screen. Recalculating. The letters glitched. Rerouting. More distortion. Finally, the screen went completely black. The driver's reflection stared back at him from the dark display, pale, wide-eyed. Then, behind his reflection, another face appeared, smiling. He jerked his head around. The back seat looked empty at first glance, swallowed in shadow. But then he saw it. The hitchhiker wasn't sitting normally anymore. He was crouched on the seat. Too close. His head tilted sideways at an unnatural angle, eyes wide and unblinking. The GPS screen flickered back to life suddenly. Instead of a map, a single red dot pulsed in the center. Beneath it, 3 words appeared in bold letters. You are here. The driver looked outside the windshield. The road ahead was gone. There was nothing in front of the car, no asphalt, no trees, just darkness. And slowly, the red dot on the screen began moving closer to the edge. I. The car was silent except for the low hum of the engine and the driver's uneven breathing. His hands were slick with sweat as he stared at the empty road ahead. Then, click, the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the car, sharp and loud. The driver flinched and reached to turn it off, but the knob wouldn't move. It felt stuck, frozen. The static slowly softened. Underneath it, something else began to form. A faint whisper. At first, it was impossible to understand. Multiple voices overlapping, speaking too fast, too distorted. The sound rose and fell like distant whine through broken windows. Then the voices synchronized. Clear. Cold. There is no way back. The driver's heart pounded violently. What do you mean? He shouted at the dashboard. The radio crackled again. A burst of static exploded through the speakers, making him wince. There is no way back. Each word echoed slightly, as if spoken inside a long tunnel. The temperature inside the car dropped suddenly. The windows fogged from the inside, despite the freezing air. In the rearview mirror, the hitchhiker was staring at him. Not smiling this time, just watching. The radio shifted again. The whisper changed, this time sounding exactly like the driver's own voice. You should have kept driving. His breath caught in his throat. I am driving, he whispered back. The station display began to spin through numbers rapidly. 88.8, 101.3, 13.13, 666. Then it stopped. 13.0 FM. The whisper returned one last time, now right beside his ear instead of through the speakers. You passed your exit a long time ago. The road ahead slowly began to fade, as if reality itself was turning off. The driver didn't want to look. Every instinct told him not to adjust the mirror again. But something pulled at him, an unbearable curiosity mixed with fear. Slowly, his trembling fingers nudged the rearview mirror upward. His breath stopped. The hitchhiker was staring directly into it. And smiling. Not a normal smile. Not human. The corners of his mouth stretched far beyond his cheeks, splitting the skin slightly, as if it wasn't made to open that wide. Thin cracks formed at the edges of his lips. His teeth were too straight. Too many. Rows that didn't seem to fit inside a normal jaw. The driver's heartbeat pounded so loudly it drowned out the engine. Stop the car, the hitchhiker whispered softly. The driver didn't respond. He couldn't. The smile grew wider. Slowly, painfully, as if invisible hands were pulling the skin apart. A faint tearing sound filled the silence of the car. The driver gasped and looked away, but the smile remained burned into his vision. He forced himself to glance back at the mirror. The hitchhiker was closer now, still sitting in the back seat. But in the mirror, his face was only inches away from the glass. Breathing, fogging the surface from inside the reflection. The driver suddenly spun around in his seat. The back seat was empty. No hitchhiker. No smile. Relief rushed through him, until he faced forward again. The windshield reflected the mirror's image. The hitchhiker's smiling face was now right beside him, in the passenger seat, and his mouth opened wider than before. Why are you still driving? The driver couldn't take it anymore. The whispering, the smiling reflection, the suffocating silence. With a sudden burst of courage or desperation, he twisted in his seat and looked directly at the back seat. It was empty, completely empty. No hitchhiker, no shadow, no sign that anyone had ever been there. The seatbelt hung untouched. The fabric of the seat was smooth, undisturbed. Even the faint cold presence he had felt moments ago was gone. For a second, relief flooded through him. I knew it, he muttered shakily. I'm just imagining things. He let out a nervous laugh and turned back toward the road. The laughter died in his throat. The rearview mirror still showed the hitchhiker sitting in the back seat, smiling. The driver froze. Slowly, very slowly, he turned around again. The seat was empty. He faced forward. The mirror showed the hitchhiker leaning slightly closer now, breathing, watching. His pulse hammered painfully in his chest. His vision blurred as panic took over. This isn't real, he whispered. He reached up with trembling fingers and adjusted the mirror downward so it reflected only the empty back seat directly. For a brief moment, nothing. Then, the reflection shifted on its own. The mirror tilted upward without him touching it. The hitchhiker's face filled the glass. not smiling this time. Expressionless. His lips moved silently. The driver turned around one final time. The back seat was still empty. But this time, the indentation of someone sitting there slowly began to press into the cushion, as if an invisible body had just leaned forward. I. The driver gripped the steering wheel tightly as the air outside began to change. At first, it was barely noticeable, a faint mist creeping across the asphalt. Then the fog rolled in. It came from both sides of the road at once, pouring out of the trees like pale smoke. Within seconds, it swallowed the headlights, reducing the world to a dim, white tunnel. He slowed down instinctively. "I can't see anything," he muttered. The fog thickened unnaturally fast. It didn't drift like normal mist. It moved with purpose, curling and twisting as if alive. The beams of the headlights barely stretched a few feet ahead before being consumed. The hitchhiker hadn't spoken in a long time. That silence felt heavier now. The driver leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. Shapes began forming inside the fog, tall, shadowy figures standing just beyond the reach of light. Watching, he blinked, and they were gone. The radio emitted a faint hum again, but no clear sound came through. Suddenly, something ran across the road ahead. A dark blur. He slammed on the brakes, but there was no screech of tires. No slowing down. The speedometer dropped to 0. Yet the car was still moving. The fog pressed closer to the windows, thick and suffocating. It began seeping through the tiny cracks of the doors, curling around his ankles like icy fingers. His breathing became shallow. Then shapes began appearing clearly within the fog, faces. Dozens of pale faces drifting alongside the car. Expressionless, eyes open, all facing him. In the rearview mirror, the hitchhiker finally spoke. "We're here." The driver looked forward in terror. There was no road anymore. Only endless white fog, and something massive shifting inside it. The fog hadn't lifted. The road hadn't changed. The hitchhiker hadn't moved. Then, his phone rang. The sudden sound made him jump, so hard the car swerved slightly. His heart pounded as he glanced at the glowing screen mounted on the dashboard. Caller ID, his own number. His breath stopped. "That's not possible," he whispered. The phone continued vibrating insistently. The ringtone sounded distorted, slower than normal, like it was being dragged through water. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello." His voice shook. For a moment, there was only static. Then he heard breathing. Fast, panicked breathing. And then, a voice. His voice. "If you can hear this, don't pick him up." The driver's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? Who is this?" The voice on the phone sounded terrified. "It's you. I don't have much time. You're stuck in a loop. He's not real. He never was." The driver slowly glanced at the rearview mirror. The hitchhiker was staring directly at him, smiling faintly. "You have to crash the car," the voice whispered urgently. "It's the only way to wake up." The signal crackled violently. Behind the static, the driver could hear something else, another voice overlapping his own. Deeper, calmer. He already tried that. The driver's stomach dropped. "What do you mean tried?" he whispered. On the phone, his own voice began screaming. The sound of screeching tires echoed through the speaker. Metal twisting, glass shattering, then silence. The call ended. Slowly, the phone screen changed. One new voicemail appeared. Timestamp, 10 years ago. In the back seat, the hitchhiker leaned forward slightly. "You finally answered," he whispered. "I." The driver's breathing was uneven as he forced himself to focus on the road. He needed something real, something solid. That's when he noticed the mile marker on the side of the highway. 13. He swallowed. Hadn't he passed that already? He kept driving. A few minutes later, another sign appeared through the thinning fog. 13. His fingers tightened painfully around the steering wheel. No, that's not possible. He checked the dashboard clock. Still 12:17 a.m. The fuel gauge hadn't moved. The engine sounded the same, steady, endless. Another mile marker approached slowly from the darkness. His heart pounded harder with each second. As the headlights illuminated it, his stomach dropped. 13. This time, the numbers looked scratched into the metal instead of painted. The surface beneath them seemed stained, dark, and uneven. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The car surged forward. The next sign came faster. 13. But now there was something new carved underneath it. A name. His name. Cold dread washed over him. He glanced into the rearview mirror. The hitchhiker was staring calmly, No smile, no anger, just patience. You're stuck where it happened, the hitchhiker said softly. The driver shook his head violently. It was an accident. The road ahead began filling with mile markers, dozens of them lining both sides now, all reading the same number. 13, 13, 13, 13, 13. The numbers seemed to stretch into the distance endlessly. You never stopped, the hitchhiker whispered. The driver suddenly understood. It wasn't a distance marker. It was the time. 13 seconds. The moment of impact. And he had been reliving it over and over again. The signs wouldn't stop. Every few seconds, another mile marker appeared in the headlights. 13. Again. 13. Again. The numbers lined both sides of the highway now, stretching endlessly into the darkness like gravestones. The driver's chest felt tight. His breathing came in short, broken gasps. The steering wheel felt heavier in his hands, as if the car itself was resisting him. "This isn't possible," he whispered. The hitchhiker leaned forward slightly from the back seat. "It is," he said calmly. The driver's mind raced through memories he had tried to bury for years. The rainy night, the sudden figure in the road, the violent impact. The way he had kept driving. He never called for help. He never turned around. He convinced himself it was a deer. But deep down, he knew. The mile markers grew closer together now. No space between them. 13, 13, 13, 13, 13. The clock on the dashboard flickered. 12:17 a.m. Then it changed. 12:18. 12:19. 12:20. The driver blinked. The numbers snapped back to 12:17. The hitchhiker's voice softened. "You never left this road." The fog cleared suddenly. Up ahead, illuminated by the headlights, was a crash car wrapped around a broken guardrail. Smoke rising. Fresh. The driver looked down at his hands. They were covered in blood. Slowly, the engine sound faded. The headlights dimmed. The hitchhiker opened the car door. "Time to pick me up again," he said. And the world reset to darkness. A lone streetlight flickering in the distance.